Hello everyone and welcome back to Fricktaining Tales. Let's get comfortable, relax, and begin. I told you about a story that happens to me. Look, I don't know how to explain this, and I don't expect you to believe me. Hell, I barely believe it myself. But something happened to me last month, something I can't forget, something I can still feel inside me. It started like any other Saturday night. A couple of drinks at my usual bar, trying to shake off the loneliness. That's when I saw her. She was mesmerizing. Tall, dark-haired, skin so pale it was almost translucent under the bar lights. Her eyes, God, her eyes were a shade of gray so light they were nearly white. She wasn't my usual type, but I couldn't look away. She came to me. That's the part that still doesn't make sense. She walked straight up like she knew me, like we'd already met. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. "You're exactly what I need tonight," she said, brushing her fingers against my wrist. Her touch was ice cold. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, we were at my place. She barely spoke, just kissed me with a hunger that made my skin prickle. Something about her made my head swim. I don't remember falling asleep, but I remember waking up. The bed was cold beside me. The apartment was silent, too silent, like the air had been sucked out. My chest felt wrong, heavy, like something was moving inside it. A slow, twisting sensation just beneath my ribs. I stumbled to the bathroom, flipping on the light. My reflection looked pale, my lips cracked. And then I swear to God I saw something shift beneath my skin. A ripple, just below the surface, like a tiny thing squirming under the flesh of my abdomen. I doubled over, gasping, pressing my hands against my stomach. My skin was smooth, unbroken, but something inside pushed against my palm before slithering away. Panic set in. I searched for my phone, for any trace of her. She was gone. No number, no last name, just a fading scent in my sheets like dried roses and something rotten. The days that followed were worse. The thing inside me grew bolder. I felt it move when I ate, when I breathed too deeply, when I lay still at night. It wasn't a normal pain, it was alive. Sometimes, I swore I could hear it, a faint clicking noise, like tiny bones snapping together. Doctors found nothing. X-rays, scans, blood tests. They told me I was fine, that it was stress, that I needed rest. I wanted to believe them. Then last night happened. I woke up to a sharp, unbearable tearing inside me. I barely made it to the bathroom before I collapsed onto the cold tile floor. Something moved up my throat, forcing my mouth open wider than it ever should go. I saw it in the mirror, saw the thing crawling from between my lips, stretching my jaw to the brink of shattering. A slick, black shape, too many legs, too many eyes. It wriggled free, landing in the sink with a wet, slapping sound. And then, it turned to look at me. I don't know where it went. I don't know where she is. But I know this, I'm not alone anymore. I can still feel them inside me. And they're still growing. I tried to burn it. I tried to kill whatever came out of me. But it was fast, too fast. The moment it scuttled out of sight, I knew it was waiting. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every shadow seemed to shift, every creak in the apartment made my skin crawl. Then, just before dawn, I heard it. A whisper, right against my ear, but the voice was mine. She'll be back soon. And she won't be alone. I ran. I don't know how long I drove or where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay. But the further I got, the more I felt it, them. Crawling. Burrowing. Growing. I pulled over at some gas station in the middle of nowhere, ran into the grimy bathroom, and locked the door. My hands trembled as I lifted my shirt. Something was moving. Pushing. stretching my skin like a drum ready to burst. Then came the pain. Agonizing, splitting pain as something tore through me. My vision blurred, the world spun, and all I could hear was skittering hundreds of tiny legs clicking against the floor. When I woke up, the bathroom door was open. The sink was filled with something dark and wet. I was alone. But I knew the truth. I wasn't supposed to run. I wasn't supposed to fight it. I was supposed to spread it. Another story. I didn't believe in ghosts. Not really. Not until last night. I was passing through a small town on a work trip, bored out of my mind, when I saw the sign, "Tour for the Dead Midnight Walk Through the Forgotten." The guy selling tickets outside was old, with sunken eyes that made me uneasy, but I figured, why not? A little local ghost tour could be fun. There were only a few of us, a couple holding hands, an older woman with a camera, and a teenager who looked like he was forced to be there. The guide was a tall man in a tattered coat, his voice like dry leaves scraping pavement. He didn't introduce himself, just started walking, and we followed. The town felt wrong at night. The street lights barely cast any light, the air was heavy, like it was pressing down on us. Our first stop was an old church, its windows black and empty. "The dead don't rest here," the guide murmured. "They walk. They listen. Sometimes, they follow." The couple laughed nervously, but the guide didn't smile. He just turned and walked toward an alleyway I swear hadn't been there before. As we walked, the streets grew darker. The buildings around us seemed older, more decayed. The air smelled like wet earth, something deep and rotting beneath the surface. I looked back. The street we had come from was gone. No lights. No signs. Just endless, crumbling buildings. "Where are we?" the teenager whispered, stopping in his tracks. The guide turned slowly, his face obscured by shadow. "We're on the tour," he said, voice softer now. "We keep walking." I looked at the others. The woman with the camera was gone. Just gone. No sound, no movement. One moment she was there, the next, she wasn't. The couple noticed too, gripping each other's hands tighter. "I want to go back," the man said. The guide tilted his head. "Back where?" I turned again. The street behind us had changed. The buildings looked burned, skeletal remains of a forgotten town. And in the windows, in the alleys, just at the edge of the flickering lamplight, shadows moved. "Watching." "No," I muttered. "No, no, no, this isn't real." The teenager bolted. He ran past the guide, deeper into the dark. A second later, we heard his scream. And then, silence. "He won't be the first," the guide said, almost sad. "Or the last." The couple started whispering prayers. I wanted to run, too, but my feet wouldn't move. The guide looked at me now, really looked at me, and I realized something I hadn't before. His coat wasn't tattered. It was rotting. His hands weren't gloved, they were blackened, shriveled, the skin barely clinging to the bone. "The tour must continue," he said. "We're not done yet." And that's when I understood. We were never supposed to leave. We were part of the tour now. The couple turned to me, their faces pale with terror. "Run," the woman whispered. "Please, we have to run." But the guide only sighed, shaking his head. "It's too late. The tour is ending." The ground beneath us shifted, the air growing thick with the scent of decay. Shadows slithered out from the alleyways, moving with unnatural speed, circling us like predators. I reached for the couple, but the moment my fingers touched theirs, they began to fade. I watched, horrified, as their skin turned to mist, their mouths open in silent screams before they vanished completely. Only their echoes remained, lingering in the air. I turned to the guide, my heart hammering. What did you do? He smiled then, his teeth jagged and broken. They joined the forgotten. I stumbled back. No. No, I won't. You already have. I looked down at my hands. My fingers were losing color, becoming translucent. My legs felt weak, my vision darkening at the edges. I tried to run, but my body no longer obeyed. The last thing I saw was my own reflection in a broken window, my face hollow, my eyes empty. And then I was gone. Now, every night, I walk these streets with the others. I see new faces join, their terror fresh and sharp. We whisper warnings to them, just as the ones before us did. But it never matters. The tour always continues. And no one ever leaves? Another story. Grandpa's rules for the basement. As told by Thomas Wheeler to his nephew, Jake, 1 week before his disappearance, recorded on a handheld cassette player, 1998. Thomas, you're old enough to hear this now, Jake. About why I never let you play in the basement. It ain't the damp or the spiders. It's Grandpa's rules. First was, never go down after dark. That one made sense, old house, bad wiring. But then came rule 2, if you hear singing, hold your breath until it stops. I learned that one at 12. Heard You Are My Sunshine drifting up the stairs one night. Sounded just like Mama, except Mom'd been buried 2 years by then. Jake, muffled, but Uncle Tommy, what's down there? Thomas, long pause, when Grandpa died, I found his journal. First page said, don't be mad I fed it. It was here first. Last page had measurements. My height. Wait. Shoe size. Dated the day I was born. Tape static. That night, I broke the rules. Went down at midnight with a flashlight. The concrete wall at the back. It's fake. Just plaster over rotten wood. And behind it? Sharp intake of breath. There's a space about the size of a coffin. Floors covered in eggshells and baby teeth. And on the far wall, carved deep, thank you for the meals. Tape cuts to 10 minutes of silence, then Thomas, whispering, Jake. Whatever you do, don't. Recorder clicks off. Last words are faint. It learned to knock. Entry. I should have listened to Uncle Tommy. For 5 years, I followed the rules. Never go down after dark. If you hear singing, hold your breath. When it knocks, don't answer. But last night, at 3:17 a.m., the rules changed. The singing came first, Rock-a-bye baby in Mama's voice. Then the knocking. Not on the basement door. On my bedroom wall. Right where Uncle Tommy's old room used to be. I pressed my ear to the plaster. Heard something scraping inside. Then a whisper. Jackie, you're all grown up now. That's when I remembered the last page of Grandpa's journal. The one I tore out and burned. The one that said, it only takes one wheeler per generation. Feed it a nephew, and the son goes free. The gasoline smells sharp as I write this. The matches are in my hand. I can hear it climbing the stairs. Let's see how it likes being fed fire. Epilogue. Firefighters found no remains in the ashes. The basement survived intact. New owners report, the singing has changed. Now it hums Ring Around the Rosie. The last surviving photo of the Wheeler family shows 3 generations standing on the porch. If you look closely at the basement window, something is waving. Next story. I saw her again. I don't know if I was awake or still dreaming, but I definitely saw her. I thought all of this had ended after the funeral, but now I don't know. Is this a haunting? Is it just stress from what happened with Dave? Jimmy said that maybe if I write down everything that's occurred, I can get it out of my head and I can finally sleep again. even though it feels wrong after what I found. But here goes. Poker night. It started a few weeks ago, right before Halloween. It was a regular poker night at Frank's, but Dave was late. Jimmy, Frank, Lucas, and I just played without him. It was almost midnight when Dave finally showed up with the strangest expression and soaking wet. "Dave, I was starting to get worried about you," I said. "You weren't in the office today." Yeah, I just took a little trip to Watertown." "Is it still raining out there?" "No, no rain." "Then why are you all wet?" "Oh, just a swim." None of us got that. We just looked at him in silent confusion. Hey, did you guys know that Emma died?" Deadpan. Now the silence was from shock. "Emma Bell from school? When? How?" Just today. They apparently don't know the cause." And then I noticed his distant shallow smile. "Well, come on and sit down, man." We dealt Dave in and kept playing for another hour while trying to talk about Emma. Dave was awkward and unusual, but nothing in the conversation was really memorable. The funeral would be here at home next Saturday, not in California, and we all planned to go. When we headed out at around 1 o'clock, Dave's car was not out front and I offered to give him a ride home. He didn't seem to remember how he'd gotten to Frank's house, and I told him we would report his car stolen in the morning. "So what were you doing in Watertown?" I asked him, just trying to figure out what was going on. You ever read the Bible?" It was hard to keep my eyes on the road. He didn't seem right. "Not as much as I should. But yet." You know Jesus said that if a seed doesn't die it will always be alone? But if it dies it will have new life. I asked him if he feels alone. I think it's just time for a change." "What kind of change?" I have an idea, but I can't tell you yet." I glanced over and saw that distant smile still clinging to his mouth. "Okay, man. Just be safe, and don't be afraid to talk to me if you need help with anything." He and Emma dated in high school and I don't think he ever got over her, so I knew this had to be a heavy blow. I was just trying to look out for him. When we arrived at his place, his car was in the driveway, covered in mud. Engine running. He said he drove down to the river earlier, but had no better explanation than that. 5 days went by and I didn't see or hear from Dave at all, so Jimmy and I went over to his place after work on Thursday to find him. His front door was cracked open, but he didn't answer when I called for him. So I pushed it further and we went in. The house was a mess. Food on the counter, cooked, but uneaten. Candles burned all the way down. Empty liquor bottle on the floor. Torn shirt on the back of the sofa. In the bedroom, boxes of old memorabilia scattered across the floor and bed. Bathroom mirror cracked. But there were two things in particular that caught my attention more than the rest: a wallet I'd never seen before with nothing but a picture of Emma inside and a little journaling notebook, like the one I'm writing in now. If only I had known the significance of the wallet then, I would have taken it and saved us some trouble. Maybe. I'm not so sure anymore. Jimmy was pulling my arm to leave when I saw a stain on the wood floor, mostly hidden by the rug. Looked like a blood stain. Panic started to set in. I fumbled with my phone to call the police as we headed for the door, when Dave was suddenly there, blocking our way. We froze. He lunged. He attacked us, hitting, biting, squeezing Jimmy's throat. I had to kick him hard in the chest to get out of the house, but he didn't chase after us. I demanded that the police come, though we weren't going to stick around. But when they arrived, his house was ablaze, and he was nowhere to be found. I only realized that night that I had taken the journal, stuffed into my jacket pocket. And I then stayed up reading it until the sun was lighting the pages. I should probably include some of that journal here, otherwise this won't make any sense. The journal. Hello, journal. I'm not sure why I decided to start writing this now, but I've got some things on my mind. I'm in Los Angeles for work as I write this, and I thought I would see if Emma had time for a drink. But she was out for lunch when I checked in at her office. A place called Frankie's. When I got there, I saw that she was with someone else and I didn't want to interrupt. I did find a new wallet though at Little Tourist Trap in Chinatown. It says "Make your dreams come true" on it. Cheesy. I had a dream about her last night. Her black hair and emerald eyes. Why did we ever split up? I went on a date with Liv from work yesterday. We had dinner and went to a show. It was Jimmy's idea. She's nice and I like her, but I don't think there will be a second date. I brought up Emma again and she was visibly annoyed about that. I just can't stop comparing them to her. I went and saw that psychic today and had her read my fortune. I didn't quite follow every explanation, but apparently the tarot cards revealed some warning about obsession. I think the cards were the devil and the world and justice. I don't know, it's probably all bogus. I'll have to look more into that. She finally answered the phone. We didn't talk long, I could hear her boyfriend in the background. His name is Jimmy too, just like my old pal. Funny little world. She didn't think it would be a good idea to see each other when next I'm in town. Jimmy shouted in your dreams. That made me mad. The psychic was wrong about my fortune. As I've been studying, I keep coming up with readings of romance and dreams and new life. Exciting stuff. I did something stupid last night. Emma called to tell me she broke up with Jimmy. I got the car started as we talked, but she told me not to come, she just needed to tell someone. So I drove to a bar instead. It's been a long time since I've done that. Is a bartender a good therapist? Anyway, I was pulled over afterward and spent the night in lockup, but they let me go in the morning after I paid the fine. That's it, I'm never doing that again. Never drinking, never thinking about Emma, and never writing in this again. Goodbye, journal. Hello, life. I am as one reborn. From death into new life with new hope aflame inside me. I had a vision as I drowned. All went black save for a single spot of brilliant emerald. I felt the verdant embrace and I knew it must be her spirit beckoning me from beyond. I am now resolved to do it. It is the opportune night, when spirits may cross over, and I will not shun my opportunity. I bet you old book be my medium as into the void I go after her spirit be my anchor in the world so I don't get lost in the vast empty cosmos up I go up and out of my mind and in my soul. Where are you my love my life? Don't let me drift aimlessly airlessly always out of me into you. Be a beacon for me shining in the darkness of my soul, dark as your raven hair. I see your emerald star. In death we will have new life, but if I can't have you, what good is my flesh? I drowned for you, died for you, I am coming for you to bring you back with me. I hear your voice, it whispers to me I love you, I love. The examiner judges me, please this can't be wrong. I know it's wrong, hide me with your ebony veil from his eye that sees all I've done, but I can't go back without you. Please come in death, everything out here is dead. Is this all it is? Cold sick light, I have you, I have to now return. Don't let go, why are you letting go? I will hold on and make you real again, not just a dream but mine alone. Reality slipping from me, filling me again, falling from the edges of infinity back down to infirmity, filling with this emptiness. Why does it feel so empty when I have you? Are all I need to crash into the sea of my mind, drifting now to sleep, to sleep, to sleep underscore. My dream, you are so beautiful. How did I ever live without you? Can't you sit by me while awake? She's finally here with me, watching as I write. But she can't see the words, or maybe doesn't know the words. Is that strange? Is this right, what I've done? I have to remember to put the wallet in a safe place. Her voice doesn't sound right, but when she whispers, always whispers, it's intoxicating. I close my eyes and get lost in the warm black pitch of her presence. Time is slowed. How long has this night been? How long this lifetime? Why does she hurt me, after everything I've sacrificed for her? How could she say such things? Such terrible things. About my friends. I won't do it. Damned if she reads this. I don't want to do it. But I have to obey. I cannot give her up. Not after I worked so hard. She'll really leave, I think she really will. They won't understand. No one will. But it has to be done. Where can I go when it's all in my head? But she's not just in my head, she's here now. Isn't she? The funeral. It's been a week since Emma's funeral and now tomorrow is the next one. The police had asked each of us where Dave might be, but the only answer any of us could give was St. Luke's Church on Saturday. It wasn't a solid enough guess or a big enough case for them to allocate any sizable resources, but they said there would be an extra squad car on the block during the funeral. It took some convincing to bring Jimmy along, shaken up as he was. If Dave did show up, I knew I had to get a hold of that wallet, but I didn't know how I could do it. I figured he had to have it with him. It was only a hunch, but it was all I had. Half the town turned up to mourn Emma. The large church was packed like sardines. It was claustrophobic. In that sea of people, there was no finding Dave. I felt trapped and vulnerable, without knowing the source of the danger. Jimmy and I sat near the back on the right side, while Frank and Lucas took the other side. Toward the end of the service, after the family members had finished paying their respects and reminiscing over lost days, I had given up hope of finding Dave. He hadn't come. To where had he disappeared? Would I ever know what he had just gone through? I only wanted closure for this mystery and help for my friend. Then he walked up on stage from a back door. Jimmy and I both sat up, suddenly tense. Disheveled hair, days-old stubble, red and wild eyes. He looked right at us and smiled. Friends. There was a hoarseness to his voice that normally wasn't there. Why is everyone so sad? Emma's not dead. She's finally home. The wary congregation assumed they knew what he was talking about and mumbled some affirmation. That's right. The dream of success and fame had sunk its teeth into her, and she suffered for it. But I rescued her. No murmurs of affirmation for that one. And you all sit there in your church pews and judge us for the things we've done? You have no idea what price I paid to take what I want. And now you want to take it from me. His face lifted slightly and his head cocked like a dog's, and he began laughing. I got the feeling then that we weren't supposed to be there, that we'd made a mistake in coming. Some men near the front stood up and started to approach the stage. He said something about fate and the end of the universe. Even as they grabbed him, his crazed sermon flowed from him like someone reciting an ancient incantation with exaggerated fervor. I'll try to remember everything I can, it might be important. I am the servant of my lady, and it is by my hand that the Ethereum gate has been opened once more. Your souls are lost while I am at her side. And now none of you will be able to stand against the tide of darkness that floods down from the Emerald Star to raise up the Chthonic city in reclamation of its birthright dominion. You will all fall prey to the sirens of Asmodeus and Baal-zebub, as you have already fallen prey to your own lust for comfort and pleasure and power. When the stalker of dreams grabs hold of you, your soul will never be found. But Jimmy and I did not stick around to listen for long to that infernal speech. We were outside when the police rushed in and the screaming started. I glanced back, and through the scrambling bodies, I saw Emma standing up from her casket and bright green flames shooting from Dave's eyes. The police report is wrong. I know what it saw. Jimmy tells me I need to get my facts straight. He won't say it, but he thinks I'm crazy. I'm not crazy. The next thing I remember is driving my car. Dave was in the car, fighting with me, grappling for the steering wheel. Eyes still blazing green. Jimmy unconscious in the back seat. The car busted into the rail yard, and it took all my strength to avoid the train. Then we were on the bridge. Jimmy came to as we rammed through the side barrier. He scrambled out the rear door as the car came to rest, teetering, front tires over the edge. I tried to plead with Dave to stop, but his hands were on my throat. I hit him as hard as I could in the face, which made him turn toward the windshield for only a moment. He must have seen the rushing waters of the river down below us. When he turned back to me, the green in his eyes dimmed and faded. His grip on me relaxed. The car lunged forward as if being pulled into the river like a backwards battle with an underwater angler. Dave's face suddenly changed from madness to fear and he grabbed a hold of my hand. He looked deep into my eyes, pressed something large into my hand, said I'm sorry, then pushed me out of the door. Jimmy caught my shirt to keep me from spilling over the edge as the car plummeted into the abyss. I stood there and stared at the aftermath flowing swiftly away from me until the sirens arrived. The object in my hand was the wallet. Inside the wallet was the picture of Emma. Is this the Ethereum gate? I know I have to burn it, to destroy it. But I can hear her voice begging me not to. And those eyes are so captivating. She says she'll sit with me at Dave's funeral tomorrow. I'm so tired, but I know if I go to sleep she'll be there again. But staying awake is no safer. I won't look, but I think she is sitting in the corner, watching me. Always on the edge of my sight. I want to look. I have to burn the wallet. Another story started. It all started when my old man passed away. Not unexpected, his health had been going downhill for months. The last few weeks were rough. He'd stopped drinking fluids, needed hospital visits for 4 treatments, and then, just like that, he was gone. I was at his bedside when he passed. Held his hand, said my goodbyes. I'll never forget his hand, 3 fingers missing, half his pinky gone. He used to tell me it was a carpentry accident, but something about that story never sat right with me. Anyway, after the funeral, I met up with his lawyer, Mark. Good guy, known my dad since high school. He hands me a copy of the will, tells me to look it over. Most of it was standard house money, a chunk donated to charity. But then I see this part about a hidden safe, supposedly behind the wall in his office. Now, I grew up in that house. I knew that office. Spent years in there, and I never saw anything that even hinted at a hidden safe. No seams, no odd markings, nothing. But I'll be damned if my curiosity didn't get the best of me. So, I drive over to the house, and it's dead quiet. Feels different. Maybe it's just because he's gone, but still, I get this feeling like the walls are watching me. I head straight for the office, and everything's just how he left it. Old military photos, a shadow box from his service days, a dusty old PC. I even see a crayon drawing I made for him when I was a kid, still propped up on a shelf. Made me pause for a second. Then I got back to business. I ran my hands over the wall where the will said the safe was hidden. Nothing. No grooves, no difference in texture. Just plain old drywall. So I go out to the garage, grab a hammer, and take a swing. Clang. Not the dull thud of drywall breaking. This was metal. I tear away the wall, and sure enough, there it is. The safe. 3 feet tall, about 2 feet wide. The dial had 99 numbers, and a handle just below it. My dad left the combination in the will. First number represented the beginning, second was for the number of owners he was the 23rd, third was the current year, which, somehow, the safe auto sets. That part made no damn sense to me, but whatever. I spin the dial, pull the handle, and it opens smooth as butter. Inside, 6 drawers. The top 4 were small, the bottom 2 bigger. I go straight for the bottom left. Gold. Actual gold bars. I reach in, barely touch one, and whap. The drawer slams shut like a bear trap. Slices off my pinky and part of my ring finger like it was nothing. And then I swear to God the safe laughs. This high-pitched, manic cackle. I'm screaming, swearing, grabbing my hand as blood's pouring everywhere. I rip the bottom of my shirt, wrap my hand as best as I can, and start looking for my fingers. They're gone. Nowhere. Like the safe ate them. I bolt out of the house, get in my car, and speed to the ER. Doc patches me up, asks what happened. I tell him it was a carpentry accident. He buys it, gives me some painkillers, antibiotics, the works. Now, any normal person would have walked away. Would have boarded up that room and never looked back. But me? I couldn't let that damn safe win. Next day, I go back. This time, I come prepared. I grab a piece of metal tubing from the garage, something strong enough to jam in the drawer to keep it from slamming shut. My plan? Open the other bottom drawer, the one next to the gold. See if it has anything just as valuable, but outsmart the damn thing. I open the bottom right drawer's low. And there it is, a massive diamond, shining under the light. Had to be at least 16 carats. Worth a fortune. I wedge the metal tube between the drawer and the enclosure, keeping it open. It strains, trying to snap shut, but the tube holds. I smirk. Not this time, you bastard. I reach in. Fingers graze the diamond. And then the whole safe vibrates. Like it's alive. The tube suddenly pops out and whap. The drawer snaps shut again, this time taking my entire right hand clean off at the wrist. And that laugh, Jesus Christ, that laugh. Louder. Mocking me. I'm in shock, just staring at the bloody stump where my hand used to be. I stumble out of there, barely make it back to my car, and drive to the hospital. Same ER. Same doctor. He looks at me, unimpressed. Mr. Anderson, I think you should really give up carpentry. I force a weak smile. Yeah. I'm done. Not worth it. Not for any amount of money. That night, I lay in bed, haunted by that damn laugh. I see my bandaged hand, feel the ghost of my missing fingers. Everything's different now. Even the simplest things, brushing my teeth, buttoning a shirt, are a nightmare. Next morning, I run some errands, then head back to the house one last time. I stand in the office, staring at that cursed safe. The door's still open, and I swear it's mocking me. So I do what should have been done in the first place. I shut the door, spin the dial, patch up the drywall. Bury the damn thing. Like it was never there. Then, I drive to my lawyer's office. Hello, Mr. Anderson, he says. How may we be of service today? I lean forward, take a deep breath. I'd like to update my will. Next story. Clara didn't know what she was looking at exactly. The scene that played out before her made her skin crawl, and she wanted to run, but fear locked her in place. Out of the fear responses that she could have, of course it had to be freeze. All she could do was pray to the gods that whoever, or whatever she was staring at, wouldn't notice her lurking in the background. There were 3 figures that emerged from a disheveled metal Conex box hidden deep within the woods. Only one of them appeared to be human, but using the word human seemed wrong to Clara. There was something very dark radiating off of him, and his eyes were completely black with red glowing pupils. Next to the man stood a pillar of flesh that towered at least 8 feet tall. The creature was covered in pulsing veins and appeared to have a sweaty gleam. There was only one small green eye in the middle of its body. Looking into the creature's eye, Clara could sense a deep pain lying deep within it, and she couldn't help but wonder why. Then it dawned on her, that thing used to be human. What could have possibly caused such a grotesque change in a person's physical appearance? Was it even scientifically possible? Was she just looking at some sort of experiment? Does it even matter? She had no idea why she was bothering to take the time to think about the origins of this monster rather than trying to muster up the courage to move her feet, but the more she tried to stop thinking about it, the more thoughts came flooding in. Then it made eye contact with her. Clara immediately thought that she was going to die. Then, sadness washed over the creature and created a connection to her, deepening her theory that this thing used to be human. But nothing happened, and they started walking away, clearly with intent. Clara needed to know where they were going, but she didn't know why. She didn't even know how she was going to possibly get her legs to move. It's not as if she could just think about them moving and it would happen, but then it did. Before she knew it, she caught up to them, making sure she stayed far enough away to not be noticed again. Just because nothing happened to her the first time, doesn't mean her luck will be the same a second time around, although Clara was noticeably lucky to everyone around her. Through the rain and leaves, Clara could see that the pair was meeting up with a third member who was most definitely a human man this time. Desperation was emanating off of him and he seemed empty. His eyes were widened so far they appeared to be tearing in the corners, and small tears mixed with blood were occasionally streaming down his face. The man appeared to be pleading with the other man, but Clara was too far away to hear anything. Silent and slow, Clara creeped closer until she was within hearing distance of what they were saying without being spotted. She missed the first half of the conversation, but she caught the end. "I promise I'll do anything. Whatever you want. Even if you want me to kill someone. I don't care anymore. Nothing matters, unless you can help me. This could change who you are as a person, and not just on the inside. Your physical appearance will change and you will no longer appear human. Everyone's form is different depending on the severity of how far they fall into madness. It is your choice in the end though, how you turn out I mean. Although, there are not many who can resist the temptation of darkness once they have tasted it, even if it begins with a selfless act to help another. I don't care, just tell me what you need me to do." The next thing Clara knew, she was awake in the woods. Then panic set in. What had happened last night? More importantly, how did she fall unconscious without realizing it? The last thing she remembered was a conversation by the two men, but how did it end? She was determined to find out, but didn't even know where to start, let alone how she got all the way out here. After pulling herself together, emotionally and physically, Clara pushed her way towards an opening that she saw in the distance. Once she got closer to the tree line, she realized that the forest where everything had taken place was in her backyard. It didn't seem possible to her though. Clara had explored the back of her house for hours growing up and never came across a Conex box before, or anyone else for that matter. When Clara entered the house, nobody was home, which was odd, but then she noticed the time. Shit. It was already 9 a.m. and Clara had an 8 o'clock psychology class. She rushed to clean herself up, get ready, and head to class. Once there was no point in sneaking in when the lecture was already halfway over, so she decided to look for Emmett in his usual hiding place, the library. In the library, Clara found Emmett immediately and started blurting out the events from the previous night. "Are you sure you weren't dreaming?" asked Emmett. "I'm positive. Nothing about that felt like a dream or looked like a dream. I always know the difference. Plus I've never slept-walked before," Clara said. Emmett countered with, "Yeah, but you don't remember going out there or falling asleep. Did your parents say anything?" "They weren't home when I got inside this morning. I'm going back out there to figure this out. Do you want to come with me?" Clara knew what was going to come out of Emmett's mouth next, so she didn't know why she bothered to ask him. "Sorry, I can't, I have to study. Try to stay grounded in reality, okay? It was just a dream." With Emmett's deep blue eyes, dimples, and half smile, she almost believed it when he said it. "Yeah, okay." She just thought that if anyone was going to believe her, it was going to be him, so she couldn't help being a little disappointed. Clara didn't hesitate to go searching as soon as she got home. The only problem was that the sun was starting to set. Darkness would be falling soon, and that sent a chill down Clara's back. She thought about bringing a flashlight, but she didn't want to have anything that could draw attention to herself. Before she knew it, the voices from the night before carried in the wind. He's going to be here soon, and no, he has no idea. In fact, he wanted to come. The first voice was the man, then came the voice of the man who seemed more demonic than anything. After he's dead, we'll join you. Dead? Clara thought, what's going on here? Slowly Clara moved towards their voices until she saw them standing in a small clearing about 50 feet away. The flesh creature was with them too, but there was something else there too. It appeared to be a shrine of some sort with an empty coffin displayed on top in the center, surrounded by at least 100 candles. There didn't seem to be anything else noticeable about it though, other than the fact that the coffin was empty. As Clara was scanning the area, she made contact with the flesh creature again. This time was different though, a scene played out before her eyes. The man looked well put together, and Clara could tell by the way that everyone reacted to him that he was popular and well liked. So it surprised her when he walked up to the most antisocial, awkward-looking person that she had ever seen before and asked, "Hey Rob, do you want to hang out tonight?" The man looked up like he was expecting to get hit the second he lifted his head and managed to force out a quiet, "With me? Are you for real?" As the scene faded from Clara's mind, she noticed movement along the edge of the clearing. Rob was walking over to the man seemingly unbothered, but he seemed really nervous. "Hey, what's going on, Ma Dash?" The man struck Rob so fast and hard over the head that he crumpled to the ground on impact. The events that followed happened so fast that the only thing Clara could do was squat there frozen in fear with her hand covering her mouth to muffle any sound that she could make while tears streamed down her face. The man dragged Rob's lifeless body into the shrine's coffin where he continued to bludgeon his body with a metal bar. Each blow was followed by a squelching sound and blood was scattered all around the clearing. About a minute after the man started his ritual, the other two came back and joined. They all took turns inflicting unnecessary damage to an already dead man's body until it was unrecognizable. Clara was going to be sick. The murder wasn't even the worst part though, it was the joy that they all reveled in as they took part in their sadistic ritual. Their manic laughter will forever be an echo in the back of Clara's mind. Underneath the coffin, a pool of blood began to form a perfect circle that was pitch black. Clara's attention was drawn away from the mysterious void to the man, who started crying out in agony. His body rippled and contorted into something resembling an early stage of the flesh creature. "Clara! Clara! Honey, it's going to be okay, shhhh." Clara's eyes shot open to the sound of someone screaming and her mother's voice. She quickly realized by the rawness of her throat that she was the one screaming. As awareness flooded her, she also realized that she was at the edge of the woods, now facing her house. How did she wander back this far without any recollection? What happened out there after the ritual? Why does this keep happening? Then the memories of Rob's murder flooded back. "Mom, we need to call the police. Someone was murdered. Something isn't right. There are monsters out there." The police found nothing. Nobody believed Clara, not even Emmett. Her mother even started pushing therapy because Clara hadn't been able to sleep in following weeks and stopped showing up to her classes. Clara was willing to give therapy a try in the hopes that the images and noises from that night would stop flooding her mind. After her first few sessions though, she was disheartened. Nothing the therapist said or suggested seemed to help. Talking about what happened brought Clara nothing but disappointment, thinking about how she is the only one who knows the truth. "You think you're right about all of this and it's true, correct?" Somehow Clara's therapist always knew what she was thinking. Regardless, she responded with an irritated, "Yes, that is correct. How about we try a little hypnosis?" "Yeah, sure." The last thing that Clara remembered before she closed her eyes was her therapist's eyes flashing all black with a glowing red pupil. When she woke up, she was clearly in the hospital and tied to a bed. Clara was eerily calm as she looked around, noticing flowers and get well cards covering the shelf next to her bed. Her head was hazy, but she still remembered everything. Next one that make you feel relax. Jacob Willis examined the goods laid out on the hastily erected table set in the parlor of the rundown apartment. Various household goods were arranged neatly, each with a pre-printed price sticker affixed. Jacob cast about for any items that looked decently interesting, but nothing caught his eye. One of Jacob's favorite authors had recently died and he was here to get a glimpse into the man's life, if only through his belongings. Alex Keyes was an author who produced some fascinating works of fiction in his day. Sadly, it looked like Jacob's literary idol had lived a life of dreariness. Keyes wrote dozens of short stories in his early days, but few were ever purchased or published. But after some time, he'd honed his craft and produced his magnum opus, The Fall of the Betrayed. It was a darkly suspenseful story about greed and lust and had an overall supernatural bent to it. Keyes developed exceptional characters that inhabited a magical world. Jacob's writing career tracked very closely to Keyes' early days. His published short stories gained him enough notoriety that he had established a small fan base. He had yet to produce anything of any great import. Try as he might, he could not put the story to the page. He had the ideas, but they forever remained in his imagination. Jacob hoped he could find something in Keyes' meager belongings that would give him some inspiration. Jacob couldn't help but feel a distinct sense of disheartenment as he perused the shabby apartment. The walls were coated in a greasy patina of cigarette smoke residue and shafts of light from the torn blinds speared the floating dust. What furniture that was left was battered, torn and stained from years of use. Jacob saw that his idol had indeed come to hard times. He did not realize until now just how badly those times had broken him. It looked to Jacob that Keyes had given up. That he was merely existing, and no longer living a life. Jacob could understand his idol's downturn in life. Keyes' young wife and daughter were slaughtered in this very home. While Keyes was away on a book tour, a murderer assaulted the wife before slitting her throat. The police suspected that the daughter was slain to keep her from identifying the killer. The police, and pundits, considered Keyes to be the prime suspect in the killings. Neighbors reported the couple fought bitterly and loudly. Keyes stormed out of the home and kept away for days at a time. The prime reason they suspected Keyes was the latest story had too many similarities to the events surrounding the murders. Critics held that Keyes wrote the story as a blueprint for the murders. Keyes' only defense was that he was states away on a book tour. His movements were accounted for and the police were forced to look elsewhere for a suspect. They eventually fingered a vagrant who had been hanging around the neighborhood and claimed he'd been watching the young wife and knew that the husband was not at home. After that, it seemed as if the wind was knocked out of the writer. Time went by and he was forgotten. Fans assumed he had died. But he hadn't died. Not until now. The story goes that he had died in this very flat, sprawled in his easy chair. He was found by his landlord, looking for the late rent. Jacob had heard the stories and with a macabre sense of awe had hoped to find the chair amongst the furnishings being sold. To his chagrin, it was not among the items in the flat. Kitchen items were laid out on the kitchen counter. Bedroom items were laid out on tables in the bedroom. The office items were laid out on the expansive writing desk. Jacob had no interest in the mundane flotsam and jetsam and he left that to the other rummage sale folks. His disappointment in the lack of interesting items was profound as he perused the offerings. Ordinary items littered the desk. An ancient Smith Corona in fair condition took up residence on the center of the desk, among the various mundane office supplies. He rifled through desk drawers searching for valuable wares, but none were found. In one drawer, he found a key. It was amongst a mass of rubber bands in the top drawer. The key looked old and of the type to lock a case. Could it fit the typewriter case? He checked it and found that it didn't fit. He looked around the room and noticed that there was a small wing chair in the corner. Next to it was a table draped with a stained cloth. Jacob lifted the cloth and found an old steamer trunk with a locked clasp. He fit the key into the lock and it turned. Inside the chest, he found numerous boxes the size and shape of a ream of typewriter paper, and manila envelopes, all neatly arranged within the trunk. There must have been a dozen boxes in there and even more manila envelopes. He removed the top boxes and read the neatly printed labels. The titles of the works were familiar to Jacob. He knew of them and had read most of them. But there were several that he had never heard of. He was astonished to find a box labeled with the title of the book that was attributed to his family's murder. Jacob felt a sudden elation. This must be the manuscript of that book. He lifted the box out of the chest, and it rattled a bit. When he opened it, he found a black cased pen atop the pages of the manuscript. Jacob was enthralled. He was an aficionado of fountain pens and had several of his own. This was a fountain pen that was from one of his favorite authors. He shuffled through some of the pages of the manuscript in which the pen was found and examined the pen itself. At first glance, the pen appeared to be ancient. The shaft and matching cap were turned from what seemed to be bone with etched designs that reminded him of scrimshaw. He pulled the cap off to inspect the tip. It was thin like a whip blade, but well formed. Jacob lightly shook the pen and heard a subtle sloshing noise indicating that the ink was still liquid. He'd assumed that the ink had dried as there was no leakage onto the manuscripts. Tentatively, he tested the pen against a page of the manuscript. He turned to the blank back of the first page and scribbled a sentence. He then compared his scribble to that found on the manuscript and to his admittedly untrained eye, that the two matched in thickness and density. This was the pen that the writer used to author his works. This was an astounding find. He must have it. He was in the process of placing the paper back into the box when he caught sight of a curious thing. The scribble that Jacob used to test the pen wasn't a scribble. It was a full sentence. A sentence that he had not thought he had written. The sentence read, in neat orderly cursive letters, "Hello Jacob Jacob, it seems like it's been an eternity, but I have finally found you." Jacob's heart skipped a beat and he let out a little yelp. He hadn't written that, he was certain. Or maybe he had. He wasn't so certain of it. The sentence was more than a little daunting and it cut through his initial elation. Now he wasn't so sure that he didn't want to drop everything and run from the building. With considerable effort, he took a deep breath and calmed himself down. "I.e.," the clerk exclaimed as he threw the pen down. "I think it bit me," he added, clearly startled. He looked at his fingertip, then placed it in his mouth and sucked. The clerk had been handling each of Jacob's purchases as he itemized them for the sale. Jacob caught sight of the pen as it landed in the box. A bright bit of color darkened the pale scrimshaw of the pen barrel. A crimson blot stained the barrel near the nib end. As he watched, the stain faded, and appeared to soak into the coarse material. The clerk was too engrossed in his finger to notice the happenings of the pen. "The thing cut me," he accused. "It sliced my finger wide open," he said as he proffered his finger for Jacob's inspection. "Those splinters are sharp. You don't want that, do you?" he asked again. "I'm sorry for your injury, but that is not the fault of the pen," Jacob replied. "See, there are no splinters or hard edges. It's as smooth as a marble," he said as he displayed it in his gloved hand for the clerk to see. The pen was in fact smooth and clean. The barrel and its matching cap now appeared to be made of a heavily lacquered bone. The nib gleamed like newly polished brass. The clerk examined the pen. "The thing cut me," he said petulantly as he completed the sale. Jacob did not like writing his stories on the computer like every other author in the world. He found that when he wrote that way, he spent too much effort self-editing and correcting as he typed, and it took him out of the story and out of his head. He preferred to use a pen on paper and just write. He liked to write in shorthand and let the story flow to the page. Any errors were later corrected in editing. But for the initial draft, it was pen and paper for him. Jacob performed a full examination of Keys's fountain pen, cleaning the tool, and was surprised to find he did not need to refill the bladder, as it was full of purplish-colored ink. He was a little hesitant when he pulled a blank page from Keys' trunk stash of paper. He knew he was reluctant to use this particular pen once again. He wasn't sure if he was ready for any new startling revelations. He felt an odd sense of satisfaction with using the pen and the paper from his one-time favorite author and acknowledged its rightness. He placed the tip of the pen to the paper and waited for inspiration. And he waited some more. Suddenly, the pen twitched in his hand of its own volition. At last, he wrote. Except he did not write that. His hand held the pen and the pen tip pressed to the paper, but he did not move the pen. What the? Jacob began. The pen moved once again. Jacob was startled but managed to keep a grip on the item as it writhed in his grasp. The sensation was uncanny. Hello Jacob, the pen scratched out on the paper. Jacob fought the urge to send the pen flying across the room. He examined the pen with renewed intensity, searching for any anomaly that he missed on his first examination. He unscrewed the barrel and slipped out the contents. There was nothing there but the bladder. He had expected to find some sort of mechanism to account for the movement. Maybe it was a novelty tech gadget that was built to do just that. Some sort of magician's pen trick. This must be some sort of joke, Jacob said aloud. The pen vibrated in his hand. Quickly he reassembled the thing and touched the tip to the paper. Ah, that's better, the pen scribbled. What are you? Jacob asked aloud. I'm your cure for writer's block. What? You have a great story inside you. You just have to let it out. You are blocked, emotionally, because you do not believe in your talents. Your mind is your own worst enemy. You do not believe that what you have to say is any good, and you do not believe that you can tell the story that is any good. The pen scratched furiously and produced a string of jittery symbols. The writing was in shorthand. I don't believe it, Jacob admitted. The pen wiggled in his hand once again. You will, in time. All you have to do is hold me and put my tip on the page and I'll do the rest. Can you write my stories for me? No, not at all. As I said, I merely remove your emotional blocks. What you write when you hold me is all from you, just like any other pen. The difference is that you believe I can do this for you. So it's all psychosomatic? I believe therefore I achieve. If that's what you like, then yes. Then a thought struck Jacob. Were you Key's muse? The pen seemed to hesitate a moment before coming to life. I know only what you know, Jacob. I have no memory of my own. I can feel your mind and see what you imagine, and I bring it out of your subconscious. At least that's what I think I do, because that's what you think I do. Of course, Jacob mused to himself. That's why Keyes rose to such great fame. He didn't produce his greatest works until he found you. That sounds like a great story. Tell me all about it, the pen scratched. Jacob wrote for hours at a time. At first, he felt an elation as the story unfolded through his pen. The narrative flowed naturally, the characters were robust, and the images were vivid. Jacob was so entranced with the visions that he felt like a spectator watching a movie in an empty theater. He caught every image on paper and described the action vividly. Jacob preferred action and adventure and far-reaching space sagas. He'd eschewed horror and dark thrillers, both in novels and movies. Such stories evoked emotions he did not enjoy. After a while, Jacob noticed that the images in his mind became darker and profoundly sinister. The more he wrote, the more his thoughts drifted to the darkness. Writing itself became trance-like. When he was in the thrall of writing, images came unbidden and like many a bad dream, he had to struggle to throw off the pall. More than once he startled from the trance and found himself in a cold sweat and panting heavily. Hours had passed and he had no recollection of events other than the visions. His hand cramped painfully and his hands were stained from the ruddy ink as it smeared on the page. There were days when Jacob couldn't bear to take up the pen. The very act of writing evoked strong revulsion. For a time, Jacob tried using a different pen. He had a large collection and chose one at random. He held it expectantly, tip to paper, and waited. Eventually, Inspiration came and he began to write. He waited for the trance to come, but it never came. Under the trance, the words flowed effortlessly. Without the trance, the words came out haltingly and laboriously. The sentences were incomplete, the imagery was muddled, the characters were flat and the plot went nowhere. Jacob threw the replacement pen away with disgust and picked up Key's pen one more time. "I can't accept this," Larry Saxon said, tossing the manuscript on the desk before Jacob. "It's too bland. Too cliché. Your fans will hate you for it. And frankly, nobody will buy it." Jacob nodded morosely. "Well, I tried," he muttered to himself. Then he continued. "Science fiction has been in my bones since I was a kid. I could scarcely dream of anything else. I ate up all the stuff that the great authors could produce. It is the manna that I eat. It's the ambrosia that I drink. I aspired to produce stories to equal the greats. I had them in me, I could feel it." "You were great, once upon a time," Saxon agreed. "But not that great. You were good enough to sell a few books though. You should be proud of that. Are you conducive to a change of genre? Do you think you can sell horror?" he asked. "What have you got?" Saxon asked suspiciously as Jacob produced a second manuscript from his satchel. "This is great stuff," Larry Saxon proclaimed. "You haven't written anything this good in years. You'll publish it?" Jacob asked with trepidation. "It'll be the pride of our catalog," Saxon crowed. Jacob smiled weakly. "You don't look so well. Are you all right?" Saxon asked. Jacob was startled. "Yes, I'm fine. I've just been working a lot. This new book, it's very dark," Saxon said. "It's darker than anything you've done before." Yes, it is. What are you getting at?" Jacob replied, with some heat. Saxon backed off. "It's just that it may have taken a toll on you. You're my publisher, not my therapist," Jacob bit back.